Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm the founder of FemPeak, a Web3 education platform where we prepare you to participate in the ownership economy and the next generation of the internet. We are led by women and inclusive to everyone, ready to shape the new emerging world order driven by technology. Although we have recently shifted so much of our focus to Web3, we continue to cover other important topics around self-empowerment, career development, and entrepreneurship. My guest at today's podcast is Abigail Bryant Spolar, the global customer success leader for Notabene, a crypto compliance company doing important work in the industry as experts in crypto regulations. Abi and I were having a meeting about some educational sessions that she was going to deliver on the FemPeak platform. And the conversation was so interesting that we decided to press record and turn it into a podcast. Neither of us were quite camera ready, but the conversation took precedence. Here's my conversation with Abigail Bryant Spolar. So for everybody listening to this podcast, I will mention this in the intro of the podcast as well. This was not supposed to be a podcast. This was just a meeting between me and Abi, who currently works at Notabene, and she used to work at Elliptic. This was a meeting, and we've been talking about a few sessions that we want to be potentially running on FemPeak. And I'm not wearing my makeup. I'm like, I've got that box behind me. But the conversation was so interesting that I was like, wow, this could be a podcast. Shall I press record? And Abby kindly agreed to for me to press record. So so Abby, you were telling me about you've been having these conversations with gentlemen, usually middle-aged white men that are trying to tell you about crypto, and you know more about crypto than they do. This happens to me as well. Like I've had conversations with people that maybe come from a financial background, and they're like, they think that like now they bought a Bitcoin, now they know about crypto, and I've had conversations where then I've had to sit down and like let me explain the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, and what this space is all about. So do you find a similar kind of thing, that you actually have all this knowledge, but because you are a young woman, that people think you probably don't know much about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've been very lucky in the places that I've worked, in that I think that they've always created this environment where there's so many incredibly knowledgeable, talented women that I'm surrounded by. I almost fall into a false sense of security in that I'm like, oh, this is just how it is. Like, I'm surrounded by these incredible women who know so much about the crypto space. And then when you go out into the world, it's almost like a reality of like, oh, hang on a minute. This isn't how it is. And I think, for me, crypto is like it's an unexpected benefit, but crypto has actually provided like some of the people, some of the women that I look to, as colleagues and I look up to, it's because the crypto space has brought us all together. So, when I go out into the world, I'm almost like surprised again. It's like going through that whole process again, where you're like, okay, we need to kind of take it back a little bit. Yeah. And it's just, it's just that feeling of bringing people along for the journey, men or women.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever you identify as, I think crypto has this incredible power of kind of equalizing the knowledge, that in the fiat world, people have built up financial knowledge over generations.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, that doesn't matter anymore. You can come from a background where you don't have the financial security or knowledge within your family or within your community. And all of a sudden you can build a new community. So I think that is the best thing.
Yeah, crypto is so powerful. Like, there's so many points in what you just said that I would like to pull out from that conversation and zoom into each of those separately. One of them is, this whole idea. One of the things that I'm noticing is that we are becoming a lot more financially savvy just by getting into crypto. Like, the amount of things that I've had to learn, like because of crypto, I've had to actually go back and learn everything about finance. Like, I can't say that I know everything about, traditional finance, legacy finance. I'm trying not to use the word traditional for anybody listening to this. If you work in a bank, I apologize for using, because I was once having a podcast interview with a gentleman from NatWest, one of the MDs at NatWest, and it was a really good conversation, but I kept saying traditional finance or traditional banks, and I didn't realize that maybe I'm upsetting him, and he didn't say anything, but like in the end, he was like, or traditional finance or traditional bank, as you would say, and I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. His name is Matt Tugg. We've got the podcast on our podcast. So since then, I've kind of like become a bit more aware of the choice of words, and I'm like, trying to not say, because when you're in the crypto space, people say TradFi, DeFi, TradFi, DeFi, right? Everything is like, we use these terms like trad in a way, traditional in a way that it's like, that's like not we don't mean it in a bad way, but I can see that if you are in. Yeah, so now I'm trying to use the word legacy. Okay, so if you're in legacy finance, don't be upset with that. But yes, so I feel like I've had to learn so many things about legacy finance since getting into crypto, because I've had to understand like the difference between tokens and shares, right? Like tokens and like stocks, right? And the more I learn about it, the more I realize this new system is so much more interesting. It speaks to me more, as somebody who didn't come from that kind of financial background. I've had to learn everything I know so much more about tokenomics than economics, because it's so much more interesting. Why do you think that is the case? What makes tokens and token economy so interesting?
I think the fact that the books are being written like as you learn. So I think it's very easy to, well, I don't know about anyone else, but for me sometimes it when I'm learning about like financial literacy and all of the elements, trying to set up myself in the best possible way financially, it can always feel like I'm starting on the back foot. I'm trying to almost catch up, because I feel like I've missed so much already in terms of, I didn't come from an environment where this was something that was talked about. We didn't, talk about stocks and shares at dinner. We didn't, this isn't something that I've been brought up around or felt really comfortable with, in terms of, I feel like with, I should not say the traditional finance space, but with the legacy financial space, there definitely is this feeling of us and them, the feeling of like, do you belong in the places that you're having those conversations? And so when I joined the crypto space, all of a sudden, I felt like, one of my good friends and who introduced us, Tara Anderson, she is one of the most amazing women in the crypto space. She's amazing. She's amazing. She once said to me, like, and I use her as my, like, she knows everything. But she once said to me, there's so much I don't know. And it was like actually so refreshing for me to hear somebody that I'm like, she knows so much, because that is the crypto space, right? There's just so much you can dip your toe into depending on what you're interested in or what speaks to you. Are you particularly passionate about NFTs that have a social purpose, or are you particularly interested in the regulatory side of things and how to protect consumers and how what governments are doing? Like there's so much that you can, depending on the things that interest you or the areas that you're particularly relevant to your day-to-day life. There's so much that you can dip into, and it's still being written. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't have that feeling of like, I don't belong in these conversations, or I don't belong in this forum. And it's that feeling like, we're all learning together, And, when I was working at Elliptic, one thing we often said when we were hiring new people within, I work in the customer success team, so we manage accounts with our clients' accounts, often said like, if you're looking for a role that already has like the cookie cutter blueprint of what you're going to do. Like, this isn't, like, work in the crypto space isn't it. Like, we are writing it today. Like, we're writing what it's going to look like. People will look at what we're doing today and be like, oh, okay, that's how it's done. So, and I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to our Scrum Master yesterday, and she said, I was asking her to make these changes to the homepage, and she said she's based in Czech Republic. She was like, why don't I come to London, at the end of April, and we sit down a whole day and like work this out? I was like, no, it's not going to work like that. We're going to keep changing, because like, this space is moving, and we still constantly redefining, exactly how we are going to communicate. We don't know what this is. We don't know, like, Ethereum, like when that was created, like a lot of people think of Ethereum, say, as an asset, but Ethereum is not just an asset. It's like, I keep explaining to people, like, this is like a decentralized version of Amazon, Apple, and Google in combined.
I read an article, I can't remember where, and it said that Ethereum is the app store of the future. Like that's
what I say. Like I always say, it's kind of like Apple in some ways. It's like it's like Apple, but it's decentralized, and and it's fascinating because there's so many things being built on it, but it's at the same time, it's not efficient. There's still so many issues, like gas fees. If I throw myself out of this window, it's because of gas fees. Because I'm sending people their NFTs, and it's like I'm constantly paying so much gas fees, and it's like, really, yeah, but it's not perfect. And people look at that and say, but this is not scalable. This is not perfect. Of course, it's not perfect. It's so new, right? It's just being built as we speak. And why don't you get involved and make it perfect? Like
solve some of the problems. Exactly.
Because there's the opportunity there. The other thing I wanted to mention was that about women supporting women. I feel like I see a lot more women supporting women in the crypto space, whereas I don't see as much of it in traditional finance. I've had legacy finance. I've had people that I've spoken to, within the kind of legacy finance institutions, and I explained what I'm doing, with like bringing more women into technology and into finance. And no interest whatsoever in investing, for example, in FemPeak. Whereas in the crypto space, I haven't even asked for it, and people are like, "Do you want investment?" And women are so much more supportive of each other in this space, in the crypto space. Why do you think that is? Or is that also your assessment too?
Absolutely. Like I said, both the crypto companies I've worked with, all of the women are incredibly passionate, intelligent, and also very supportive. And it's also, I think there's more and more women in leadership positions in the crypto space. Some of the most prevalent crypto speakers and thought leaders are women. And I think that means something, because it means that, somebody sitting in their office at home on their own, they see these women elevating up to leadership positions in the crypto space, and it's attainable. I think people generally in the crypto space, I found, welcome other people that want to learn. Yeah. I think that, women or not, I think generally there is this appreciation for other people that want to learn about the space. And, I think there's an awareness that we're kind of all in this together. Like how do we get to mainstream adoption? What will that look like? And this isn't just the work of a few people that look the same, sound the same, or from the same place. This is a global purpose, regardless of who you are. But I think particularly with women, it's this acknowledgement once again of the ability of crypto to kind of balance, the
align incentives as we say.
The privilege that in legacy financial world is like difficult to unravel. Whereas in the crypto space, you know, many women want to bring others along with them for the journey. You know, I joined a number of Discord channels, and you know, I'm constantly trying to join webinars where, and largely it's women teaching other women how to get into the space and saying like, there's no reason why we can't control the conversation here, you know. So yeah. And that's why I think, you know, ultimately we want to make sure that we're bringing other people along for the journey that we're already on.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing in terms of the, because we talked about, you know, the women's side of things, and actually one thing before, I wanted to ask you about the regulatory work that you're doing. But before that, before I forget, I was having dinner with Tara Anderson that you mentioned also earlier, a couple of weeks ago. And I found myself over dinner, like we ended up talking about obviously crypto, and we talked, and we went so deep, and I was just suddenly at some point realized like all these people around us, like they're talking about different things, right? And we are talking like really deep Solana versus, you know, Ethereum kind of like debate, and you know, and like, you know, these different like really technical stuff, right? And then I was thinking, like, how many people in legacy finance, when they go out for dinner with each other, you know, on a friend basis, right, not on a work dinner or something, would actually so passionately talk about equities, you know, and bonds, and you know, like it's a really good, you know, indication of like we are so passionate about when you buy that token, you know, let's say if you buy a Ethereum token, you've probably listened to 100 interviews by, you know, the various co-founders, you know, their whole stories, you know, like if you bought like a Solana one, you do the same thing, right? So you follow these people and you know exactly what they're doing. You follow the developers, you know what's happening in their ecosystem. How many times do you buy, you know, like the stock market, I feel like it's so soulless in some ways and faceless, because, you know, you just buy this basket of things and then, you know, you just sort of wait for everybody else to kind of work and make some money from that, and then, you know, you get some gains. Whereas in the crypto industry, you actually become the users of, let's say, for example, if I buy Apple stocks or Microsoft stocks, it doesn't make any difference if I use an Apple computer. But if I buy Ethereum, it does make a big difference if I'm an Ethereum user, or Solana, you know, or you know, all these different things. And of course, Bitcoin is in a completely different, you know, class of its own. So and the other reason why I think, in terms of going back to the women's conversation thing, the reason why women are so supportive of each other bringing in, because we all need that adoption, and we are kind of, you know, building this together. We all need the numbers, right? And that's, I think, something that also kind of help it. But since you work in the regulatory areas, what's your thoughts on the current state of the regulations? You know, and I would really, of course, love to have you do a proper session on FemPeak on this topic. But where you stand right now, in general, do you see things being like better than what you thought they would be at this space at this time, or what's the hope for future?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said to you before we started recording, I have a lot, when I explain to people that I work in, I work with customers, crypto companies and you know, financial institutions, and I work with them to along with my colleagues, to help them meet some of the regulations that they have, you know, globally. And a lot of people say to me, yeah, but crypto is not regulated, right? I'm like, that couldn't be further from the truth. So generally, I think that there's still, regulation is still quite complex in terms of the requirements on different types of crypto businesses, and also from a jurisdiction perspective. You know, if you're a global exchange operating in a number of different jurisdictions who are implementing regulation at different speeds with different requirements and different severities, you know, there's a huge amount of complexity not just for the compliance team, but also for all of the adjacent teams that are having to build the solution. So, it's a huge amount of work for a crypto business's development team and product teams and marketing teams. And, it really is something that doesn't just, it's not just the case that one compliance officer sitting and saying, okay, cool, we've achieved this regulation. We've met the needs of this regulation. So I think that it is a very complex landscape and it is changing very quickly. I obviously work now at Notabene, and we focus on providing an end-to-end solution for the travel rule. And we know, I started getting asked about the travel rule probably seriously about a year ago, about 18 months to a year ago from the clients I was working with at the time. But I think at that point they were kind of like, we kind of think it's going to be a thing. We should start to think about it. And obviously in the last 12 months.
So for people who don't know about it, can you explain what the travel rule is?
Yeah, exactly. Of course. So the travel rule is a regulation that was first introduced by the Financial Action Task Force. So like the money laundering regulatory body in the US. And essentially what it requires is for virtual asset providers to share with each other a certain amount of information about their end customer. So very similar in some ways to the way that, if I was to send you money using my bank account, my bank would check with your bank that all the right checks have been done, that you're not a sanctioned person, that, that this is safe for them to execute this transaction. When the travel rule was introduced, obviously nothing like that existed for the crypto space. And also it posed a lot of challenges in terms of, identifying ownership of wallets and where you were sending funds to, and how that information not only would be sent between these crypto businesses, but how is it going to be stored? How is it going to be verified? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of challenges in terms of meeting the travel rule requirements. And that's really where Notabene, we work with customers and have built, a solution that sort of allows customers to do just that and meet those requirements. So, this month has actually been a very busy month for the travel rule, where in South Korea, in Canada, those jurisdictions had deadlines for companies to start actually meeting the requirements. Whereas before, jurisdictions had been more like, you need to start, we're expecting and you to show that you're making an effort to comply with these restrictions and regulations. Now, regulators are getting a lot stricter. And, I think probably in the next few months, we will start to see some action taken by regulators for businesses that don't comply. And I think, generally with regulation, there still is a big education gap for the people that are making the regulatory, yeah. And I think that's where, companies like Elliptic and Notabene have a huge part. Obviously they are solutions to sort of regulatory challenges, but also they act as an intermediary and really a source of information for regulators globally, and spend a lot of time educating and sort of really providing that support and guidance to ensure that the regulations that are introduced are appropriate, proportionate, and also understanding the technical limitations and requirements of the crypto space. I often would talk with compliance officers about, where regulations from the fiat space are there's an attempt to move them directly over into the crypto space without really understanding the technical differences. So, generally, I think it's still very complex, but I'm hoping that as time goes on and as regulators become more informed on the requirements from a crypto perspective, that those challenges will start to decrease for crypto businesses, and they create a framework friendly.
I don't know if they will become they may untangle one thing, but the speed of technology development is so exponential that it's going to become more and more difficult. Like, between, like I'm sure that you have had, and I've had, most of us have had 5,000 to 10,000 hours of crypto education, to be at the point that we are now. And most of these people who are like starting to get into this from the regulations, from the side of the legacy institutions, they haven't had that 5,000 to 10,000 hours, because if they do, they will be crypto pilled and they will be like, like they will completely be like, you know what, let's leave regulations, let's just focus on this DeFi thing, but the truth is that, like, it's really hard for them to regulate something that they haven't lived with, like it's really hard. So I think they might untangle one part, but there will be another thing, and then another thing, and constantly, like, for example, NFTs, they just came out of nowhere, right? Like, of course they were around since 2017, etc., but like in terms of becoming a cultural phenomenon, it came out of nowhere. And then now it's DAOs, like it's constantly something new, and how on earth are you going to regulate DAOs? Right? Like a whole new world are like, I promise you, if we pick the phone right now and out of nowhere, with that, when they don't have the time to Google, ask a lot of people in the legacy finance, in the regulators, do you know what a DAO is? They've never even heard of it, right? They may have to go and Google it before they can respond. And then they would be like, yeah, I know, but it's like a whole new world is opening, which is going to be very, very hard to regulate. So it's a very interesting space. It remains to be seen, but they definitely need companies like like yours, like ours, to help them in this journey. And we really want to have women in leading in this space, women like yourself. And of course, we're going to have you as a speaker on the platform. So so we can talk about that in more detail. Thank you for accepting for me to press record, and we will have you back on a proper longer kind of podcast. But any final words for regulators and financial legacy institutions listening to this? And then of course we're inviting them to sessions that we'll have on the platform.
I just think it's never too late to start, but also don't waste a second.
Yes.
If you leave it another day, another minute, something else is being innovated on. So it's not too late, but also like this is an opportunity. It's just filled with opportunities. So start now.
Yeah, and I would say that equally to retail investors and people who are listening to this that are just thinking about getting into this space, whether they're looking to get a job in this space, whether they're looking to build a community in this space, whatever it is that they think that they could be building or getting into the Web3, crypto, NFTs, DAOs, all this whole ecosystem that's being built, do it sooner than later, because every day that you wait is an opportunity cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Abigail. She's also a contributor to FemPeak, and you should definitely join the platform and tune into her sessions. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing to it on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. The full interviews are also available on my YouTube channel, The Somi Arian Show.